Okay, before we start things off, I have to point out that this is a mature reader's comic. And while I have edited around the nudity that is contained in this story, a lot of these comics still contain foul language, sexual references, and graphic violence. So, in other words, okay, let's get the shindig started. Okay, a little behind-the-scenes information here to start things off. I originally considered doing a supplemental episode that would cover the life of John Constantine, much like how I did with Carol Danvers. However, to do something like that would kind of wind up spoiling half a Hellblazer, and since we still have a few other Hellblazer storylines in the box, I figured to go against that, and instead, we're just going to have to nutshell things. First appearing during Alan Moore's seminal run on Swamp Thing, John Constantine is a practitioner of dark magic. He's also a punk rocker, a con artist, a chain smoker, a jerk, and occasionally a hero. During his punk rock days, Constantine and his band performed an occult ritual in a haunted nightclub located in Newcastle on Tyne. The ritual got out of hand, and John Constantine was the only survivor. Since then, Constantine has traveled the world in something of an attempt of redeeming himself by fighting demons. This has left the bodies of both friends and enemies in Constantine's wake. In 2000, writer Brian Azzarello stepped onto Constantine's book Hellblazer, and the move came with quite a bit of controversy attached to it. First and foremost, Azzarello was an American, and at that point every other Hellblazer writer had been from the UK. Also, Azzarello announced an intention to focus more on Constantine's con artist side rather than the mystical stories that fans had come to expect. The first storyline of the new direction for John Constantine was called Hard Time, and it's the story we're reviewing today. So let's begin Hellblazer, Hard Time. At a maximum security penitentiary, an inmate known as Trailer finishes his initiation of a new bitch, who he refers to as Candy. He then exits his cell as a new prisoner enters, John Constantine. Okay, I should point out that throughout most of this story, the character of John Constantine is not really referred to by his name. In fact, it doesn't happen on a frequent basis until the last part of the story. But for the sake of ease, I'm just going to be calling him either Constantine or John throughout most of it. Trailer pays the new guy a visit, asking Constantine where he's from. Constantine only responds with, "A different nightmare." Trailer begins showing Constantine around the yard, namely the different gangs in the prison. There are the Bloods and the Crips, the white supremacists, the Mafia, the Bikers, the Black Muslims, the Hispanics, and the Lifers, in particular a criminal named Stark. At the end of the tour, Trailer tosses Constantine a pack of cigarettes, and then John mocks Candy as he returns to his cell. The next day, Constantine sits down with Trailer and his crew. Trailer demands payment for the cigarettes. Either 2 packs of smokes in return, or they're in a prison. Do the math. Constantine says he understands and asks Trailer for another pack of smokes. Trailer says he can't until he gets paid. However, the rest of Trailer's crew offer John some smokes, for the same price. Constantine takes 1 cigarette from each of the crew members. That night, Constantine sets the cigarettes down next to his bed. The next day in the shower, Trailer's crew enter to collect from Constantine. Outside, Candy eagerly awaits the result. However, Constantine emerges from the shower unscathed. Candy rushes into the shower to find Trailer's crew insane and crawling all over the walls. Meanwhile, in Constantine's cell, the cigarettes next to his bed have completely burned up. Word of the shower incident spreads through the prison yard, and the gangs eventually decide to meet together and deal with Constantine on their own. There, a prisoner known as Boxer relates a story of how the black Muslims confronted Constantine. The Muslims only referred to Constantine as evil, as that has been what they have been told by Allah. Constantine responds with a few jokes and gets smacked for his cause. John points out that the only reason they hate him is for the color of his skin, and leaves, as the bell begins ringing for the Islamic prayer ceremony. The Muslims kneel down for their prayer, and it's then that Boxer notices something. He interrupts the prayer to point out they're facing the wrong way. Remember, when Muslims pray, they're supposed to be facing towards Mecca. In the case of the comic, they're supposed to be facing east. To be facing away from Mecca is a really big no-no. John then went on to antagonize the white supremacist gang, who in turn tried to get the Hispanic gang to rough Constantine up. One of the Hispanics ground up some glass bottles in the prison recycling plant, and the ground-up bottles were then sprinkled into Constantine's morning oatmeal. However, Constantine managed to switch the bowls with one of the Hispanics, and the man wound up bleeding to death as a result of swallowing the glass. It's then that Stark speaks up. He relates the story of a card game that Constantine joined. Now, the other members of the game basically folded, allowing Stark to win every hand. Constantine, though, he actually managed to push Stark to his limits. Eventually, Stark folded. Constantine then revealed that he had been bluffing the whole time. Stark just laughed, admiring Constantine's guts. Returning to the present, Stark introduces everyone to his new buddy, John Constantine. The days that follow are not all wine and roses for Stark, though, as a prison guard named Kelly routinely finds Stark's distilleries. This drives Stark to believe that one of his members have turned snitch. Stark turns to the one man he thinks he can trust, John Constantine. So Constantine goes and asks Kelly. Kelly gives a smug response, hinting that maybe he'll look away for a price. Again, they're in a prison. Do the math. As this is going on, Stark turns to his associate Buzz, who voices a dislike for Constantine. Buzz points out that Stark's kindness for the Brit may be viewed as a weakness. That night, Constantine is jumped in his cell by Kelly and a few of the other guards. Kelly tells John to pass the message to Stark that he, Kelly, really runs the prison, not Stark. He then proceeds to perform a full body cavity search on Constantine. As the search is conducted, Constantine spots a smirking Buzz from across the way. A couple of days later, Stark comes to Constantine in the yard. He informs John that his wife has come to a visit, and Constantine goes to the visitors area to find Buzz and his wife, and they're... Yeah, Buzz and his wife are reenacting that scene from Midnight Express. You know the one I'm talking about. Constantine points out to Buzz that he knows who Stark's traitor really is. Buzz reminds John what happened before with Kelly. Later that day, Stark takes Constantine into the prison exercise area where Kelly is stationed. Everyone else, save for an inmate named Weathers, exits the room. Kelly then takes out Weathers' legs. It turns out Buzz set up Weathers to take the fall, and Stark has now cut a deal with Kelly. Stark and Kelly then take Weathers and smash his tongue in between the weightlifting plates on the bench press machine. As Weathers bleeds to death, Stark turns around and stabs Kelly. Stark then hands the bloody knife to Constantine as the other guards arrive. Constantine is thrown into solitary confinement. After a while, he begins seeing visions of the people whose deaths he's been responsible for. Meanwhile, the other guards begin plotting to eventually take Constantine out after his release. Back with Constantine, he slowly begins to lose his grip on sanity, possibly due to the nicotine withdrawal, and he begins yelling at the demons who are haunting him. Eventually, all but one of the demons, who has most of his jaw and part of his skull blown off, is left. John Constantine has faced numerous demons throughout his life. Most notably would be Nurgle, that's the demon from the Newcastle incident, a trio known as the Fallen, and Nurgle's daughter, Rosencarnis. Meanwhile, a scuffle breaks out amongst the general population of the prison. Buzz witnesses this and goes to talk to Stark.
But Stark has gone raving mad and begins attacking Buzz. Eventually, he throws him over a railing and onto the fighting guards and prisoners below. This is enough to cause a full-blown riot. Back in solitary confinement, Constantine argues with the remaining Ghost. The Ghost apologizes to Constantine for getting him into this. Constantine says that he knows it's not really the Ghost's fault and not to worry. He's made plans. You see, Constantine has been going around leaving fingerprints consisting of cigarettes ash on the walls of the cells of the several enemies he's made. Constantine's magic is actually behind the riot.
Back with the rioters, they make their way past Trailer's cell. When Trailer pokes his head out to see what exactly is going on, the rioters turn around and begin seeing Trailer in the form of a naked woman. Even Candy sees Trailer as a naked woman.
Eventually, the riot makes its way to Constantine's solitary cell. They kill John's guard and steal the keys. They then barge into Constantine's cell and all begin offering him cigarettes. 3 days later, various forces, including the police, the FBI, and the National Guard, have gathered outside the penitentiary. The FBI sends in a negotiator named Turo to talk to Constantine.
Agent Turo is slowly led through the prison where the guards are being torn to shreds. Turo is even led by Trailer, who the inmates still see as a naked woman and thus are still sexually assaulting him.
Turo informs Constantine that the Feds know who he is and they know why he's there. He killed someone named Lucky Furman. The thing is, Constantine is not usually a murderer. John opens up about Lucky. Lucky was a fellow conman who worked with Constantine on occasions. One day, Lucky pulled a con on the wrong man, and now there was a price on his head. Constantine turned down the idea of helping Lucky, not wanting a price on his head in turn. Constantine then excused himself to the restroom. As he washed up, Lucky entered the room carrying a gun. Lucky gave John the gun and asked Constantine to pull the trigger. Constantine gave the gun back to Lucky and told him to collect his own damn bounty. So Lucky shot himself. Turo asked Constantine why did he take the fall for Lucky's death. John responds that with what he had been through in his life already, he felt maybe his time was actually due. Turo then makes Constantine an offer. Hand control of the prison back to the authorities, and Constantine walks free. Turo then gives John the name of the man who put the bounty on Lucky's head. Constantine takes the offer and leaves the prison.
John Constantine's search for the man behind Lucky Furman's death would go on in the next storyline, which was called Good Intentions. And that, of course, means that we've reached the end of Hellblazer Hard Time. How was it? Well, it was actually really good. I think it's very, very new reader friendly. You don't have to know a lot about John Constantine going into this thing. And I think it's very good in the pacing department. It's very tight. It doesn't meander or wander off, which, admittedly, even though I do like a lot of the Hellblazer I've read, does sort of happen a lot in Hellblazer. The storylines get a little overwrought at times, a little overly pretentious. Sometimes it's hard to tell which panel you're supposed to be reading from at some points. Sometimes even the British dialogue can be kind of hard for, say, an American to understand. That being said, if there's a real drawback to this comic, it's Richard Corbin's artwork. Now, I do like Richard Corbin most of the time. In fact, his best work, and it's probably his most well-known work, is on the European sci-fi anthology comic Heavy Metal. In fact, if you're familiar with the Heavy Metal movie, which I admit most of you probably are, the animated segment where John Candy voices the nerd who gets transported to another world and then gets transformed into a barbarian, yeah, that's actually based on a Richard Corbin story. However, it seems that when he crossed over into, for lack of a better term, mainstream comics with this Hellblazer run, and he did a Hulk miniseries for Marvel, his artwork just didn't seem to translate very well. Everyone looks really smudgy and overly cartoonish. For those of you who aren't aware, the John Constantine character is visually based on the musician Sting. So, yeah, this John Constantine that Richard Corbin drew doesn't really look much like Sting. And that is a major drawback to the comic in my book. But overall, I really did like this, so I'm going to give Hellblazer Hard Time a B. And with that, let's see what we'll be doing next time on the Random Trade Review.
Okay, a bit of an explanation here, guys. Basically, as I was selecting the title, I had a title selected. I was pulling it about halfway out of the box. I could even read the printing on the paper as to what it was I selected. except somehow it slipped out of my hand and fell back in. Figuring out that I had basically selected a title, I mean, it was halfway out of the box and I knew what it was I had picked, I knew I couldn't just pick up another title or reshoot the thing. So, to spare you the 10 minutes, and yes, it took 10 minutes to try to find the slip of paper I had pulled out originally, I'm just going to show you what it was I picked.